Alright everyone, so today we're looking at an Aeon split system. The issue with this one was a bad suction transducer, and I'm going to show you how we figured out it was a bad suction transducer and how to bypass it temporarily until you can replace it. Alright, so how do we know our suction transducer is bad and not the board or not something else? So when I arrived, my controller was telling me that my suction temperature was negative 13 degrees. That's the first sign. And it wasn't moving up or down, it wasn't changing, it was just a stable negative 13. Then the condenser would run for a little bit, turn off on low pressure, even though the refrigerant pressures were normal. So that's one thing you got to check, that you're not actually going off on low pressure. So I had a low pressure alarm. So here's where your DC block is for your sensors, like your suction transducer is low pressure here, and then high pressure is your high pressure transducer. So just a quick way to know that your board is actually sending out the right signal. It should send about 5 DC volts. So we're going to check that right now. Between these two terminals at the beginning here, you'll see DC negative, DC positive. All right, so I got my leads in there, and you could see I have 5 volts DC. You got to check on DC. All right, so we know our board is good. So our board sends 5 volts DC through our suction transducer, and out the suction transducer, it should be at least half a volt to 4.5 volts, which is the rating on the transducer itself. Some are 0 to 5 volts, you know, so you have to look at your sensor. So this one should have at least half a volt. I was getting no volts when I first checked it, and it was bad. And I'll show you how I checked it. So you see I'm keeping my lead here. You can do either one, positive or negative. All you're gonna do is get either a negative or a positive number. Like right now I have a negative number, not a big deal, as long as you see that it's more than a volt. So I stuck my other lead on the low pressure, which is for the transducer. So this is telling me voltage is coming in from the board through the transducer, coming back out this way. And if I have no voltage here at all, and the transducer's not sending any. You should have at least half a volt on this type. So finally, I put a jumper from the high pressure transducer feeding the low pressure transducer, just to trick it, to think that it's not below the point of cutout. And it's been running just fine like that. Also, when you jump it out, you need to disconnect your unloader from your compressor. You can see it comes out of the suction line, and it's got a solenoid on top. This is controlled by the suction transducer, so you just disable it. It'll be fine until you replace the transducer. So right now, the new transducer I put is giving me 2 volts. Okay, so it's sending out a signal. So that's then after we will be able to see the temperature it's actually reading on the controller. I'll try to show you that afterwards. Good. Right now I got just put on. You'll see it'll start to change because my pressure starts to drop. See it? My suction is dropping, so it's doing what it's supposed to. So Aeons have one of the best schematics you can find anywhere. Very easy to read. So here's where your you know, in case you are looking at your high pressure transducer or your low pressure transducer, you can see right here what we were checking was DC1, DC2 to make sure coming out of our board we were getting our voltage. And then we were checking, see how it goes through the transducers. This is your low pressure transducer, high pressure transducer. And then the third thing is your discharge temperature. Okay, so that's what, when you look at this block here, it's the same thing. So very handy in case you're looking at something else. Maybe you're doing the discharge temper sensor or whatever. It all works off that 5 DC, but you look at the sensor to see what your range is. Alrighty. So this is the air handler for the Aeon split system. These are nice because they have a controller interface. While usually the package units you will need a separate controller to access the set points or everything configuration. So here we got a nice interface. When my suction transducer was bad, I had a high limit alarm here. It was still blue, it wasn't red or anything, just said low limit. So otherwise it would just say normal. Everything looks normal now. And then we can actually see what our transducer is doing with our in-out inputs. Okay, so there we are. So if we go to, you can see a lot of supply air outside here. Here we are. So we're showing at 150 psi on our suction and 375 on our high side. That's why you're seeing these weird numbers. So this was at -13 when I first came here. -13 psi. Once I threw my gauges, I saw it was not low on gas, and I mean it just won't go negative anyway. So yeah, this is a very nice interface. Package units are a pain sometimes to connect with your controller, but I'll show you that in a different video. But yeah, this thing's working right now. Just in case here, if you want to go home, you just click there. If you have an alarm, it'll pop up here, and you can click on the alarm. It'll be a bell, and then you'll see what, you know, what alarms you have. So that's pretty much it for now. I'll do some more Aeon videos for you guys on the package units.